Welcome back, everyone. Episode 6, Property Powerhouse Podcast. Welcome back, Romario.
Thank you.
Success Manager, special guest for episode 6. I'm Bex and Leah, regulars now.
Yeah. Hello.
And today's going to be quite interesting because we've had lots of feedback from landlords and agents over the past few weeks who've watched episodes and gone through some of their cases and some of their experience. So what we're going to do today is, Bex and Leah, you're going to talk us through a couple of case studies that you've got, and me and Romario are going to ask you some very difficult questions about how...
There's a lot of pressure on this podcast for me and Leah. A lot.
Spotlight is on you guys, this one. Yeah. So are you happy then if me and Romario have a question, we'll just jump in at any time?
I think the case studies went down really well on one of the last episodes, so thought it'd be a good idea.
We'll go easy.
Yeah, please do.
No, we won't. So I think, Leah, you got the first case study you're going to talk us through.
Yeah, so one of mine is one I'll actually never forget. So this landlord could probably only describe as disaster. So he'd been renting to this young couple for about 2 years and everything was completely fine. And then I'd probably say about the third year in, rent arrears started to accumulate. And then out of nowhere, there was £5,000 rent arrears and the neighbours started complaining about loud parties. There was suspicious visitors coming in and out of the property. And then there was also, complete damage to the property. So the front garden was a mess, the back garden was a mess, and the neighbours were complaining. The landlord tried to mediate, tried to, discuss it with them, see what was going on. Complete silence. There was no response from them at all. And then the landlord came to find out the tenants were then letting it on Airbnb. So there was rent arrears, it was on Airbnb, and the landlord was like, what am I going to do? So he contacted Legal for Landlords and we had the initial consultation. We discussed everything that had been going on, and I said, I think the best thing to do is start the case review process and let's assess the evidence. So all the evidence came through. He had 4 to 5 witness statements from neighbours on the streets. He had Airbnb listings, photographs.
Did the police get involved at all?
Later point, the police got involved. So I thought it was best to serve Section 8. So because there was 2 months rent arrears, we did 8, 10 and 11. But based on the tenants' behaviour, we also decided to add in grounds 12 and 14 on the high chance that when they did get this notice, they were going to try and clear the arrears to stay in the property. Didn't listen to the notice at all, so went to court. Put in a last-minute defence, which the judge said was more of a hardship plea. We're not going to listen to that. Possession was granted forthwith, so immediate possession order, they had to vacate. Still didn't vacate, so went to bailiffs, and on the bailiff date, they'd actually barricaded themselves in the property. So they'd screwed wood all the way up the door. No one could get in, so we had to call the police. Police came, and it was probably about a 40-minute to an hour bailiff appointment. Finally got them out. Landlord went into the property and there was drug paraphernalia everywhere, parties. The property was absolutely destroyed, and at that point the landlord was just happy to have his property back, and now he's actually using us for debt recovery.
Romario, what springs to mind here is that if this is a situation that can happen, that as a landlord, I'd want my property fully managed so that my agent is doing regular inspections.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that I definitely will be taking out rent protection.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think the fully managed one is a really good point because it's where you started. It's that they've been a really good tenant for so many years, and that's the trap. You'll see it more than me, but landlords fall into that, don't they? They've been great for having me here, so I don't need insurance or I don't need X, Y, and Z. But like you say, you never say never, isn't it? You just stay protected. But yeah, inspections, routine inspections is key. Yeah. And rent protection, you've got that cover even once you've got the property back. Yeah, most definitely. Were they just completely silent then? Only up until the point it got to court and they challenged it?
Yeah, completely silent.
You had no response whatsoever?
Yeah, the whole way through. No, did not correspond with the landlord. No answer to the notice. They showed up on the day and said, that's not us, it's not true. Can we have longer? We can't vacate. And the judge just said, absolutely not.
It is really common as well for tenants to do that. It's seen as a delaying tactic, so they will be silent. They've received all the paperwork, they know exactly when that hearing date is, and either, a couple of hours before they'll write to the court or they'll turn up at the hearing, and they know, luckily for the landlord, that didn't happen in this case, but in some cases that's the case adjourned then for another 6 to 8 weeks, even longer if you're in London, and it's just, the landlord suffering again.
Am I right in thinking, well, inventories, I know I talk about inventories all the time, I'm like obsessed with them. I don't own an inventory company, by the way, but I think this is another reason, isn't it, that you have an inventory at the start. Definitely. And then you have midterm inspections. So am I right in thinking that if I'm a private landlord and I don't use a managing agent, I can still do midterm inspections on my property?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's recommended to do so.
And does that have to be in my tenancy agreement as a specified term?
It's best practice to have that in there, but no, it's not mandatory to have that in there. As long as you give the tenant sufficient notice and they are allowing, you in or the contractor in to do the inspection, then that is sufficient.
So I can, for example, do quarterly inspections, and in this scenario, if I had done that, then very quickly I would have seen the damage that was being caused to the property, and then that would have accelerated me being able to serve notice quicker.
Exactly. But the landlord in this case only realised 3 years in, at that point the property was destroyed and completely changed its complete look.
But just imagining what the sort of challenges might be. So obviously usually Airbnb, well, the ones I've used, you go for 2 or 3 nights, don't you? Could a tenant's argument be, oh, no, they're just friends staying over? I know you've got the Airbnb listing, but could it just be friends? Or is there something in the agreement? Does it class as subletting, or could they get away with it by just saying, no, it's just friends staying over?
The way our landlord got out of it was they actually had a friend go on Airbnb and book a stay. So
very clever, really.
They were able to go on, book a stay, and they were, sneaking around, taking pictures. And then from there, you had the evidence, witness statement on Airbnb, but definitely a breach of tenancy, unless it states otherwise that you can use it for that use.
Because there's something in the agreement as well, isn't it, about using it for business as well? It can't be a place of business as well, because I assume it would link into that as well, wouldn't it?
Poor landlord. So, second case study, Bex, is yours, I think.
Yes. So mine is Section 8, Ground 17, which is false statement. So in this particular case, landlord approached us. So he hadn't got the rent protection in place, but he had done the tenant referencing. Tenant had passed, absolutely fine. Affordability, previous landlord, seemed like a great tenant on paper. Tenant moved in within 4 weeks. Complaints from neighbours. The police were called because they were making noise, and no rent received. So, complete coincidence, the landlord, if you're on all the Facebook groups, then you can see the amount of posts that I put into these groups daily. So the landlord actually came across the tenant's name on a Facebook group, and it was actually the previous landlord warning other landlords about this particular tenant in the same area. So the landlord has looked into this further and contacted the previous landlord via Facebook, and it actually transpired that the tenant had lied on the referencing. They provided a friend as the previous landlord to get the good reference, and they'd actually been an awful tenant. The previous landlord had to take them to court, and they had a 20 grand judgment against them. They'd completely trashed the property. So we managed to do a land reg to confirm that this person was the owner of the tenant's previous property. He was happy to do a signed witness statement, and then we issued the Section 8 Ground 17 to the tenant with all the evidence enclosed. And very, very fortunately, because this is a discretionary ground, all based on evidence, I think we did have a solid case, but the tenant actually vacated upon the expiry of the Section 8, so we didn't have to take it further. But, in my opinion, I think they knew they'd been caught out at that point and there was no getting out of it. But it was just so surprising to see that the landlord had found the previous landlord on a Facebook group.
That's quite fortunate for them.
Very, very fortunate, because that allowed them to, us to build the case. We do get quite a lot where landlords will ring and say, I think the tenant lied. If you're thinking you don't have the evidence, it's not good enough. But this landlord, on the initial consultation, I was wow, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that's very scary, that, isn't it? So lessons learned for that landlord then.
Exactly. I mean, put your rent and legal protection in place. Fortunately, he only had to pay costs for, initial case review and notice stage, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. If a tenant has lied on their reference and it's passed and the landlord's taken rent protection out, will the rent protection still stand if the tenant has lied?
As long as the landlord's done all of the checks and got all the paperwork in order, then really there is no reason why the insurance wouldn't be valid.
Yeah. Okay. So Leah, have you got another case study?
Yeah, so mine's a debt recovery one. So another tenant in rent arrears, they actually just disappeared. So left the property, landlord couldn't get hold of them, went completely silent, phone number stopped working, emails bouncing back. So I said to him, let's leave it a couple of weeks, let's let them move into a new property, and then we'll start tracing them, give them time to register at a new property, and then I think we'll be able to catch them at that point. So after about 6 weeks, we ran a trace, and it turned out that they'd moved 2 doors down. So not very far, not very slick. So they moved 2 doors down, so we served a practice direction notice on them. So we gathered all the paperwork and essentially gave them 30 days to pay up. So I think there was about £10,000 outstanding at this point. Complete silence again. No response. So next step was to take it to small claims court. Court issued all the paperwork. Still no response from them. So at that point, it was time to escalate it once we got the county court judgment. So the landlord actually opted for High Court enforcement. So sending a High Court enforcement officer to the property to try and seize assets, gain a payment plan, payment in full. First visit was unsuccessful. Wouldn't let them in, wouldn't speak to them. So second visit was arranged, and out of nowhere, the tenant came and paid up. Paid the full £10,000, paid the court costs, and then at that point the landlord actually recovered everything.
So the tenant had just chosen not to pay. Yeah. It's not that they couldn't pay.
Yeah, they let it get that far and then paid in full.
Yeah, I think they learned at that point this is actually quite serious. I think not a lot of tenants realise how serious it is until you have got a bailiff at your door saying, I'm going to take your car, or pay up.
Yeah, I think that is a great success story with the debt recovery side of things. And for those landlords who may be considering, is it worth it? The cases like that, do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be worth trying, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Makes you think, have they done it before, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Have they done it before? Have they got away with it? That's why they didn't take it seriously. But like you say, what would you say? Out of 100 landlords, would you say one person goes down that debt recovery route, would you say?
It's very low volume.
Yeah,
I think it's because you can't give the landlord guarantees. So, with the eviction, you can review the paperwork and, you can give them an answer at that point. Of course, the tenant may file a defence, but you can give them an outcome. If we think it's a strong case, we can get you possession. With debt recovery, we can give them all the facts, all the information, all the costs, but we cannot guarantee that you'll recover those funds. Some landlords, it's principle. I want that active judgment against them because what they've done to me. Some landlords are just happy to get the main asset back, the property, and they don't want to sort of go down that route at all. I can understand both sides.
It's a tough one, isn't it, really? Because you think, well, if there's no guarantee, they're going to look at more money out of their pocket to do it. But as you say, when it comes a matter of principle, but then also when you've got a tenant with £10,000 in arrears, it's probably worth a chase, isn't it?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Some landlords will, once they've recovered the property, or if the tenant's left, they sort of get over the stress of that process, and they have up to 6 years to go down the enforcement route. So, they could potentially wait, maybe even wait for tenants' financial circumstances to change, and then later down the line do the trace and do the enforcement. So you have got that option.
I think the thing with a tenant reference as well, even the most robust tenant references, it's a point in time, isn't it? Yeah. So if the tenant circumstances may change, they may not be able to pay the rent. So that yet another reason why would you not take rent protection out?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's around the corner for that tenant, do you? And then at least they've got as well the contribution for paying the legal expenses, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. Leah, I think one of your case studies that you've mentioned, didn't you do a LinkedIn post and it went viral? We were really
I did,
excited.
yeah. My first one
Yeah,
went
so she put
viral.
the case study on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, when we say viral, this is our viral.
It got 60 likes.
60 likes. That's viral
That's
for
pretty
us.
good.
I was so happy with it.
Share
That is
it again
pretty
after
good.
today.
Yeah, he'll be famous after today. It'll go super viral. And then, Bex, I think you've got our final case study for today.
Yes. So the final one is a case where landlord actually purchased the property with tenant in situ. Completely new to the industry, wanted to get into the industry, and it was a property in Blackpool. Price was really good, really low. So he's purchased the property. As far as he was aware, great tenant, previous owner compliant, got all their paperwork in place. Sales gone through. Landlord wrote to the tenant to say, you know what, I'm your new landlord. This is my details. This is my service address. This is where you need to pay rent to. No response at all. This went on for around 6 to 8 weeks. Landlord was, of course, at this point getting quite stressed. They didn't have the insurance in place because he hadn't done any referencing. They literally just purchased the property. So he decided himself independently, serve the Section 21, go to court. Because he was not experienced, case got to court and was dismissed. Multiple reasons. So when he got on the phone to us, we did our fact-finding call. So we didn't have previous documents from the previous owner. So a lot of landlords feel that or believe that if they purchase a property with a tenant in situ, all of the historic documents don't matter. But if a landlord goes to court for Section 21, then they are really important. So that is a key. If you are purchasing a property with a tenant in situ,
So you've got to do your due diligence, haven't you? Make sure that you've got everything as you would if it was a ongoing property of your own anyway.
100%. So as part of the case review, we obtained all the documents, everything that we could. He did contact the solicitor that carried out the sale. He did manage to get some other documents. Deposit was registered late by the previous owner, and he just transferred it to our landlord. So we said, as best practice, get that returned to the tenant. Fortunately, he had the tenant's bank details, so he was able to do that. So we're now at a position where we've built as strong case as possible, and we was going to take the case on to serve the documents in the Section 21. Landlord then actually got a call. So because he'd visited the property trying to speak to the tenant, he'd spoke to a neighbour, and he'd actually got the neighbour's contact details. And the neighbour had contacted the landlord to say, just to let you know, the tenant has actually completely barricaded and superglued the letterbox. So nobody can actually deliver the post. So we're in a position where we're about to serve notices, first class, and record delivery to a door that the postman can't put
Knew what they were doing,
the letters.
didn't they?
Exactly. So it was very tactical of the tenant, and it just delayed things. So landlord's in South London, properties in Blackpool. So he managed to speak to a local managing agent, and they went round, and fortunately the tenant answered the door. So they was able to hand serve the documents. So we said, this is a risk. It might work, it might not. It did in this case. So take a witness, take photos. We cannot have the tenant file a defence at court to say they didn't receive these documents. So no Section 21 expired. We went to court, and thankfully in that case the landlord did get possession. The tenant didn't vacate once we got possession. They were still there, and we did have to go down the bailiff route. But yeah, it was a challenge, the initial steps. But it's just, for me, it's landlords who aren't knowledgeable within the industry. If you are purchasing properties with tenant in situ, do all your checks.
So I'm just thinking aloud then, if I'm a new investor in lettings, then I'd come to your team and say, actually, can you do me a landlord compliance audit? I'm buying this property. Let's just go down the checklist and just make sure that all the documents are here, because actually it might put me off completing on a purchase if I know that I'm going to put myself at risk.
Exactly. And, landlords, we do have landlords contacting us, that exact conversation. I've got some concerns. If I do have to go down that route in the future, will this and this being missing affect me? And we are completely transparent, and we will advise and recommend to them what they need to do.
Do you think we'll see sort of with that, and as we approach the bill, obviously it's only going to get stricter, isn't it? From what we know, I think that managing agent getting involved there, that shines a light, doesn't it? I think that landlords that even are savvy in the market, you know, but particularly the ones that are not and coming into it, that importance of a managing agent, particularly when they're so far away as well. What did you say, South London to Blackpool?
Exactly. It's a hell of a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the need for the managing agent is a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I agree. And even for inspections, you know, like we discussed previously, just having someone there local, it's just so much better for the landlord.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes a bit uncomfortable for a landlord to do an inspection on their own property.
It is. Yeah.
I think you're better having an independent managing agent who's going to do that and be more objective, I think.
I think it takes the personal out of it,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
exactly.
Looking at your example earlier with the Airbnb one, oh, they've been a great tenant for however many years.
Yeah.
You know, you go around and they say, oh, I can't pay my rent next week. Or landlords, I think at times, not all landlords, but can be a bit lenient, you know, because there's that the personal touch to
My
it.
mum's like that. My mum's got a property and the tenant never pays the rent. And she's on some sort of crazy scheme where she's paying the arrears off over about 55 years, I think. So you're like, no. That's actually what we do, Mum, you know. Let me serve notice. So brilliant. So there's some great case studies and don't be scared, landlords and agents, you know.
Yeah, we're not trying to scare you
We're not
off.
trying to scare you. We're just trying to raise the awareness really of situations that might arise and how we can help you and support you through every step of the process. So any questions that you may have as a landlord or a letting agent, you know, please just pick the phone up to any one of the team and we're happy to help when you reach out. Yeah. So thanks, Bex. Thanks, Leah. Thanks, special guest Romario.
You're welcome.
Star appearance. And we'll see you episode
7.
7. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.